This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Travel in 10 podcast. This week we are heading to Africa and going down to the southern tip of the continent, one of the largest national parks in the world, to Kruger National Park. Place, Tim, I know you've been to Africa a number of times. I've just got back from my first trip to South Africa. It was a pretty phenomenal experience. So looking forward to getting into the conversation and talking a bit about Kruger National Park.
Absolutely. I love South Africa. It is one of my favorite countries in the world. I've been 8, 9, 10 times to South Africa. And I feel like it's a country that just offers everything: food, wine, safari, beach. Lovely people. And Kruger National Park is just an absolute natural wonder. It's just massive, almost unimaginably huge, almost 20,000 square kilometers just in the national park itself, which makes it larger than dozens and dozens of countries. And then you add in all the private reserves that surround it, and it's just a huge place filled with so much to see and do. I know you were there very recently. Maybe talk a little bit about your experiences there just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it was, I was looking to go on our first ever safari in Africa, and really our first time ever traveling to Africa. So did a ton of research on different national parks, different places to check out. And the thing that really stood out to me about Kruger was just the huge diversity of wildlife there. It's a place that's really known as one of the main sites to be able to spot the big five: the lion, leopard, elephant, buffalo, and rhino. And I know, we managed to spot all of them within about our first 6 hours in the park. It was just a place that has got a huge amount of biodiversity, from the birds to the reptiles to the huge mammals that you can see there as well. And it's also a really accessible park, right? It's got really good infrastructure. It's got great roads. You can do self-driving, which is pretty rare for a safari, to be able to go out and explore the national park on your own. Most it's only guided experiences, where Kruger is a place where you can do self-drive safaris in addition to guided tours, and it means that it's both very accessible from just a logistical standpoint, but also when you're looking at cost of safari as well, you can really do sort of both ends of the spectrum as well. There's the uber luxury lodges, but there's also some really affordable ways to really get out and have an African safari experience there as well.
Absolutely. And I understand from our chat just beforehand that you did some of that self-drive, and you had a unique, fairly unique safari experience. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So there are a number of what they call rest camps throughout the park that are run by the South African government. They're very sort of basic but very comfortable accommodations, and that's where we really sort of started out our experience. Was a place called the Lower Sabi Rest Camp, where they had these little huts that you could rent for the night, or also luxury tents that you could rent for the night. You're in a fenced off compound, but overlooking the Lower Sabi River, and it was a great experience. It had a great restaurant that you could go to in the evening while you're camping out. Sitting on the deck of our luxury tent in the evenings. Just from sitting there at the tent, you would see elephants, rhinos, right there, just on the other side of the river, from where we were staying. And I think we were paying maybe just under $100 US a night to be able to stay there, and could go out and drive through the park, and really having that self-drive experience that lets you spend as much time as you want, or as little time as you want, in different parts of the park, going to see the types of animals and getting the types of experiences that you want. So I really enjoyed that self-drive experience part of it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is incredibly affordable. Whenever people ask me, how much to budget for a safari, I say minimum $1,000 a night, because safari camps tend to be extremely expensive. So that is a great tip for people looking to do a more affordable safari. And as you said, being able to self-drive, you can drive wherever you want. If your kids are really into birds, you can sit and look at the birds for an hour, and so that sounds amazing. I mean, last time I was there was last year, and I had a unique experience as well. It was I've done many, many, many tented camps, so that's kind of the regular accommodation when you go on safari in South Africa or other parts of Southern Africa. This time, I stayed on a train, which was really interesting. So two of my greatest passions are, I love safari. I love safari, and I love trains. I've done the Trans-Siberian, I've done the Indian Pacific in Australia. I've done a number of other, famous train routes. Now, this train that I stayed on, it doesn't go anywhere. There was an old train bridge across the Sabi River in the park, and somebody had the genius idea to construct rooms within 1920s style rail cars. And this is no third class sleeper. This is, really a luxury experience. And you stay in these train cars, they're suspended over the river, and then they have a pool that's also suspended over the river. And so for me, the thrill was, we could go out on game drives, we could see the big five that way, but also just walking to your room or sitting at the pool, I saw crocodiles, hippos, I saw elephants, all just sitting in a lounge chair by the pool or just out the window, of my Kruger Shalati rail car. So that was, that was a big thrill for me. I love that place. So, yeah. And I know you had a more upscale luxury experience as well, right?
Yeah, we also, one of the things that you'll find staying at Kruger is that there's the national park itself and some great accommodations in the park, like the train experience that you had, which is right in Kruger Park itself.
Yes.
There are the rest camps, the very affordable option, but then just bordering the park and also sort of surrounding the park as well, a number of private game reserves, which are, the advantage with those is that much smaller area, so much larger concentration of wildlife, and usually you're getting a more curated, guided experience there. We went to a beautiful lodge called Kuname Lodge, part of a Karawange collection, locally owned, private game reserve that's got a number of lodges on it. The one that we stayed at, Kuname, was probably the smallest of the 5 lodges they've got on the property, only about 15 rooms or so. But we stayed in this great family style sort of lodge that they had that had 2 bedrooms plus a loft, your own kitchen, your own infinity pool. But what really made the experience was the guided safaris, where you're going out 3 times a day. You're going out with both a spotter and a guide. And that's where it was within our first few hours there that we'd seen all of the big 5 out of Kuname Lodge. Also, really incredible experience in terms of the restaurant there. It's like white glove service, and most evenings you're eating in this really nice sort of dining area that they've got. But then they do one night a week where you're going to be at a traditional South African braai or the barbecue. Where you're around the fire, you've got the stars above you.
Love a braai.
And you're eating sort of local game food that they're cooking that evening, and that was a really unique, pretty phenomenal experience as well.
Amazing.
I know you've stayed at a couple of the different lodges around as well, and you've had a few of the luxury lodge experiences.
Yeah, I had just a phenomenal experience in one of the private reserves, like you were just talking about, at Sandy Sand, which is just outside Kruger. The animals, fences are down, so animals can go back and forth between the park and Sandy Sand and these other private reserves. And I stayed in a place called Tengile River Lodge, which is part of And Beyond, which is one of the big luxury safari operators in Africa. They do a wonderful job. And the lodge itself, I'll say just a couple words about it. It was absolutely spectacular. They had 9 units. Each of the units was like a little, I don't want to say a mansion, but it was very stylish and beautiful and big. And you had a lounge area and I would describe it as a full-size pool. Each of the 9 had its own full-size pool. And you could, you get up early, the mornings are early for these safari drives, but you can go back, sit in a lounge chair, sip a gin and tonic, and just enjoy your pool time by your private pool. And then being in the private reserve, I think one of the most amazing parts of that, and something that I love to do when I'm at safari, is you could do walking safaris. So you get out of the Jeep, you get closer to nature, you don't have the sound of the engine. In some cases, you come across big cats and wildlife like that. And the guides are extremely well trained. They are armed, although they never have to use the firearm. But you're out there amongst the animals, and that was something that I did at Tingile, and it was just an absolutely thrilling experience. Yeah.
The walking safaris are phenomenal. I mean, we had a chance to do one at Kuname Lodge as well on our final day there. Got out of the Jeep and went together with the guide. But you say the guides, certainly make sure that everything's done very safely. But that walking experience is really pretty unique. The guided walking experience. It's something that when you are in Kruger, I mean, doing the self-drive experience, you can't get that, right? I mean, you're not allowed to get out of the car, obviously for safety reasons anywhere in the park. But the other thing in Kruger, if you are doing the more, budget-friendly version of a safari and staying in some of the rest camps, you can still book guided safaris with, interpreters from the national park as well, where they go out and do an evening safari trip, an early morning trip, and there are even walking safaris that you can book right in the national park itself, and all can be booked on the national park website.
Fantastic. No, I mean, walking safaris. I mean, you're absolutely right. You have to have well-trained, guides to do them. But when you get a chance to do it, it is, it is a multi-sensory experience, right? You're hearing the wildlife. You can almost feel the wildlife. And, when you come face to face with a lion, which I have, it's definitely an experience that you never forget. So, I had a couple more spots I wanted to shout out. I know we're kind of getting close to our time here, but one place that I stayed in Hoedspruit, which is one of the towns that's very close to the park, was called Safari Moon. When you get a little bit, sometimes you get a little bit tired of the tented camps. I mean, they're beautiful, they're luxurious. This felt a little bit more like, if you had a wealthy friend who had a beautiful home that happened to be next to one of the world's great safari parks, and they invited you to stay at their home. This is kind of what it felt like. It had a big, beautiful pool. The suites, had mosquito netting and just, were beautifully decorated with local artwork. At night, crackling fire and cocktails and a long table dinner. The owners actually came over and joined those of us staying there for dinner, and just being able to share their experiences and chat about what it's like to live, basically in a national park. I mean, I think they talked about going for a jog and, there's a leopard down the street, and better turn around and go back to the house. It was a very unique and interesting.
If I remember, when we were researching places to stay, Safari Moon came up in my research as well. If I remember correctly, they've had some celebrity stays there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm sharing, classified material or whatever, but Tom Cruise, I believe, rented the place for like a month when they were shooting one of the Mission Impossible movies. So, I thought, well, if Tom Cruise likes it, I definitely like it too, so, not necessarily, I like Tom Cruise, but, I'm sure he has a good sense of cool places to stay. And then one last place I'll mention before we go is, I didn't stay there. I was killing some time in Hoedspruit and was looking for a place to have lunch. And there was a place called Air Hotel Boutique Hotel, which, as a traveler, you spend a lot of time on an airplane, so it might seem counterintuitive to sleep on an airplane, but it was a retired Boeing 737-300 that had suites, small, compact, but well laid out, built into the cabin, the main cabin of the airplane, and then they taken kind of decking and built around the wings, and they had restaurants and bars, or a restaurant and a bar that were just kind of up in the air on the wing. And I just thought it was cool. You know, I mean, I hung out there. The lobby, which wasn't part of the plane, had a kind of an aeronautical map of Kruger Park. And I probably spent half an hour there just walking around and looking at all the different places, the private reserves and all the different little villages and stuff that I'd visited in the area. It was a very cool, quirky experience. And next time I go back, maybe I'll actually spend the night on that 737. So great experience.
You could stay in planes, you could stay on trains, a lot of cool, unique experiences there throughout the park.
Yeah. Trains, planes, and automobiles, right? In Kruger Park. So,
the one other place I would say that, like you, we spent some time at it, but didn't actually stay. But definitely, if we were going back, a hotel that I would consider was right at Paul Kruger Gate, one of the main gates that gets into the park. Kruger Gate Hotel is relatively new, really good, like nice facilities, or a great restaurant where we had a really nice dinner there. And one of the things I really like there is they've got this great infinity pool. That they're just on the edge of the park, and it overlooks into Kruger National Park. And there's sort of an elephant watering hole where elephants quite often come in the evening, so you can be there in your infinity pool and have the elephants there in the distance. And it's also quite reasonably priced as well. It's a lot less than some of the luxury tent camps or luxury lodges. But you're right at the gate of Kruger. So if you don't want to necessarily camp out in the national park, but still want to have that self-drive experience, a good option as well.
Absolutely love that. Sounds like an amazing place. Yeah.
You've done, for me, this was my first safari experience, and I was blown away. Like, I would go back on safari anytime. I thought it was just an incredible travel experience. You've been on I ended up doing a couple of other safaris just after this throughout Asia, which really didn't stand up to Kruger. I'm going to say, like, Kruger was very much at the top of the list in terms of the 3 safaris that I did on this most recent trip. You've done a lot more safari experiences throughout Africa. Where would you rank Kruger Park?
I mean, Kruger's right up there for sure, and especially if you do a private reserve. Kruger itself can, if you go to the main areas, it can get a little bit crowded. So it's about navigating, like you did, on a self-drive or whatever, going to the less crowded areas. Private reserves are not crowded, so you definitely, and I mean, the experience is there. I mean, they've got all the big 5, and they've got lots and lots and lots of wildlife, and I think that's where an African safari versus, because I've also done, tiger safaris in India and things like that. With an African safari, you're always going to see something, and that's the beauty of it, is that, okay, we didn't see lions and we didn't see leopards, but we still saw hippos, and we still saw some cool birds. Maybe we saw a snake, and I've probably done like maybe 40 different safaris in maybe 10 different countries, and it stacks up. I love Botswana and the Okavango Delta. You get water, you get water and land, so you can go out and see the animals from a boat as well as from the land. And there's nothing like the Ngorongoro crater in Tanzania. It's like a cage match where all the animals are penned up in this huge crater. So that's another truly unique place. But Kruger has everything, and it is it is just a really fascinating place for the wildlife and for a number of other things too, including some of the unique accommodations that we've talked about. So,
and the other thing, like, that I would say, if somebody considering a safari, considering going to Africa for the first time, South Africa, sometimes you can hear a bit about like crime and safety and how safe it is to travel there. I certainly found traveling throughout Kruger and the surrounding area, it was a lot different than, say, Johannesburg. Johannesburg, you certainly felt that, from a safety perspective, you had to be a bit more careful. In Kruger, we certainly have to be aware of where you are as well. But like, I felt very comfortable with my family doing self-driving in and around the area, renting a car, like really good network of roads and really well-developed infrastructure. Always felt, very safe and comfortable wherever we were traveling around the park as well. So I think, if it, for a first safari experience, it definitely makes a very accessible entry point, and you're going to see a stunning amount of wildlife.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right about the infrastructure and the safety. It definitely feels very safe in and around Kruger, and also Hoedspruit and Nelspruit and some of the surrounding communities also feels very, very safe. And like you said about the infrastructure, even in the park, the roads are very good to drive within the national park, which isn't, necessarily always the case inside a national park. Sometimes they have gravel roads just to keep it more authentic, but it's very easy. I drove around Kruger Park and drove around South Africa, and it was a good experience. So, yeah.
And I guess my final tip would be to, if you are looking at going to Kruger, to know that there are like 3 different airports that you can fly into as well.
Yeah.
So lots of different options in terms of flights to get there from Cape Town, to get there from Johannesburg. You can even fly direct from Victoria Falls. Lots of different options on one airport on either end of the park, and then Skakuzera Airport, which is right in the park itself as well, although fewer flights going there than the other 2 airports, but makes it super accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was surprised this last trip that I went. I've always flown Joburg to Kruger. This last time, I actually a friend of mine. I've always flown. And a friend of mine actually drove me. We drove. It's about a 5-hour drive from Joburg, and the drive is actually quite beautiful. You're going through these big, dry, rolling hills and small mountains, and I'd never even thought, just because it had always been a flight, I'd never thought about driving. But it was, if you have a car and you like to drive, it's very, very possible to do that. So maybe that's my final tip is, if you're looking for a safari road trip, this is one you can do. So, yeah.
Sounds great. Well, we'll have a whole bunch more details on how to plan your trip to Kruger National Park up on our website at voyescape.com, where people can go check that out. We're also working on building out more detailed itineraries and guides to a lot of the destinations that we're covering on our podcast that you can find there on the website as well. And would ask if people are enjoying our podcast, please take some time and jump on to Spotify or onto Apple Podcasts and drop us a review, some comments. Let us know destinations you'd like to hear on some of our upcoming podcasts. And I look forward to getting back together with you next week and heading off for another journey around the world.
Absolutely. Can't wait to chat with you again, and 2 destinations that I love. So looking forward to it. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Tim.